A piece of the cross that Jesus was crucified on, a rusty tower where the Soviets used to pump propaganda into homes all over the country. What is this mysterious place, and what do this country's leaders have to say about all this?
Hey, sir, we're from America.
This guy's one of them.
Hello, good to meet you.
If you're into history, mysteries, secrets, and surprises, have we got the place for you.
How about a little trip to Georgia? No, not the state in the south. We're talking thousands of miles away. The Republic of Georgia.
We are taking it to the streets.
Pretty sure we just joined this parade right here.
To learn the things no one will ever tell you about Tbilisi.
We're not leaning one way or the other, but I think we're gonna like it here.
Raise a glass to this little enclave in Western Asia that used to be part of the USSR and still bears some of the scars of the Soviet era.
And we'll explain how the history of this city can be directly traced to a boiling bird. Seriously.
Mixed.
Like this?
Yes.
If you have a taste for the unexpected, we are about to give you an earful. Speaking of, what is that thing on that dog's ear? What's with these energy bars that date back to medieval times? And how much is a trip here gonna cost me?
It is shockingly affordable. Like dirt cheap.
The secrets, mysteries, surprises, and things they won't tell you about this part of the world.
We are in Tbilisi, Georgia for just 24 hours, and we're gonna show you how to make the most of it when you come here in this episode of Window Seat. All right, let's spit some facts about Tbilisi, Georgia. Maybe not spit, it's considered rude. Let's share some facts about Tbilisi, Georgia, starting with the most ironic one. Did you know that the name Tbilisi translates in Georgian to warm place, which is completely ironic because it's freezing cold here.
It's called Warm Place because of the natural hot sulfur springs that still bubble beneath the city today. In fact, those hot springs carry quite a bit of lore around here. In the 5th century, King Vatang Gorgasali was hunting when a bird dropped into a natural hot spring and was scalded. The king realized the ground was naturally hot and called the place Tbili, meaning warm, and built a city right here. It's also one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the entire world. People have lived here for more than 1,500 years, making Tbilisi older than Paris.
It's another one of those cool cities where Europe and Asia collide. It's going to feel very European, but the reality is you are in Western Asia with hints of Eastern Europe everywhere you turn. It's the great part of those cultures colliding, the food, the religion, all of it, that make this such a dynamic place to visit.
It's been destroyed a lot by Persians, Arabs, Mongols, Ottomans, and Russians, and yet somehow its soul is intact. And what better place to explore this country's history than at a place that's been called Georgia's Stonehenge? This is the mind-blowing Chronicles of Georgia, one of the most epic monuments few first-time visitors even know exists. Towering, mysterious, and sitting on a hill overlooking the city, the Chronicles of Georgia feel ancient, even though they're relatively modern. The monument was created by an artist whose massive work appears all over the former Soviet Union and beyond. Construction started in 1985, but political collapse and funding issues after the fall of the Soviet Union left it permanently unfinished, adding to its eerie mystique.
The place is really quite stunning. The architect actually just died a few months ago. They said he finished in 2009, but the reality is it's still not finished.
The pillars are enormous, each about 100 feet tall, carved from dark bronze and stone. It makes you feel like an ant. Each pillar telling two different stories. The upper sections depict Georgian kings, queens, and national history. The lower sections show scenes from the life of Jesus Christ, a powerful blend of faith and nationhood. As bold and brash as the monument is, this tiny little quiet building stands in stark contrast right next door. It's used for prayers and worship. It's not terribly historically significant, but from it you can get amazing views of Tbilisi Sea, which actually is not a sea at all. It's a Soviet-built reservoir created to serve the city, not inspire it. But people come here anyway, to cool off, to think, to escape the heat and the noise. Above it, the monument shouts about kings and faith and power, but below them, the water says nothing and somehow remembers everything. Man, that's deep, isn't it?
Go, Matt.
Josh.
Go, Matt.
Josh.
Go, Matt.
Josh.
All right, after all that, I need a drink. Who's ready to party? Georgia doesn't just make wine, it invented it. 8,000 years ago, long before France or Italy, people were here fermenting grapes in clay vessels buried underground. The method hasn't changed, and at mom-and-pop wine shops all over the country, you can give the homegrown product a taste. Wine in Georgia is not something you order, it's something you inherit. Families make it at home, monasteries guard ancient grape varieties. At gatherings, toasts turn into stories passed down through generations. Here, wine connects the living to the dead and the past to the present.
How we are making that?
And then there's cha-cha, this stuff. Yikes, clear, strong, and smiling politely before it knocks you flat. Cha-cha is Georgia's firewater, distilled from leftover grape skins, often homemade, never measured. It's offered to guests as a welcome drink, a test of courage, and occasionally a warning. Sip it slowly or it will remind you who's in charge. Wine is how Georgians celebrate, like our young tour guide who tells us she often drinks 5 liters of wine per day. Cha-cha is how they laugh when you think you can keep up. And it turns out I could not keep up.
I feel like I'm stumbling across the cobblestone streets after having had some of that Georgian wine and some of that cha-cha, as they call it, which is basically like grappa. If you've had that, it's like rubbing alcohol, if you ask me. Although certainly folks have a taste for it here. There was one kind we tried that tasted like melons, which was kind of pretty good. Not exactly a ringing endorsement, but if you like to try local flavors, wine and alcohol, certainly part of that. Give it a shot.
Speaking of flavors, turns out Georgia is just as serious about honey. And I mean serious. This is one of the oldest honey cultures on Earth. The bees here feed on alpine flowers, chestnut trees, acacia, wild herbs, and every region tastes completely different.
Now let's try May honey.
Walk into a honey shop in Metsketa and they don't just sell it to you, they let you try it, all of it. Spoon after spoon, no pressure. One is light and floral, another's dark and bitter. Chestnut honey hits hard, mountain honey tastes like you just hiked straight into it. And locals will tell you exactly what each one is for. Energy, immunity, sore throats. This isn't just tourist honey, it's food, medicine, and tradition in a jar. And in these same shops, you'll find Georgia's most misunderstood snack. Churchkila looks like candles or sausages hanging in shop windows, but it's actually one of Georgia's oldest energy foods. It's strings of walnuts or hazelnuts dipped over and over into thickened grape juice mixed with flour called tartara. It looks waxy, but that outer coating dries into a chewy shell that seals the nuts, keeping it edible for months without refrigeration. Originally made for soldiers, it's not a dessert, it's a snack with purpose, a medieval energy bar just waiting for you to take a bite. Let's stay with food for just a minute longer because you cannot leave Georgia without eating this.
Mixed.
Like this?
Yes. Butter and cheese and egg mix.
Okay.
Oh,
Very good. That
yes,
cooks
yes.
the egg.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Very good.
This is called khachapuri, and it might be Georgia's most famous food.
And this bite.
Fresh bread shaped like a boat, filled with melted cheese, topped with a raw egg and a slab of butter. It comes from western Georgia, near the Black Sea, where the shape is meant to resemble a ship. Bread for the hole, cheese for the sea, egg for the sun. You don't eat it neatly. You break the egg, melt the butter, stir everything together, and tear off the crust to scoop it up. It started as working-class fuel. Today, it's comfort food, hangover cure, and national obsession, all in one. Warning though, plan some nap time immediately after because this bread boat will put you straight to sleep. All right, we promised secrets, mysteries, surprises, and things no one will tell you about visiting Tbilisi. And one mystery looms high overhead, visible from all over the city. It caught my eye and I was obsessed by the Soviet secrets it held. That's the Tbilisi TV Tower, and it is pure Cold War energy. Sitting high atop what's called Holy Mountain, it went up in the 1970s when Georgia was still part of the Soviet Union. And its job was not just TV, it was control. From here, Moscow could broadcast news, ideology, and silence, all from a structure designed to dominate the skyline and remind the city who was watching. At nearly 900 feet tall, it's visible from almost everywhere in Tbilisi. You don't visit it, it watches you.
And at night, they light up the thing to where it looks futuristic, which is hard to believe considering it's 50 plus years old. When you get up to it, it's all rusted out and definitely looks Soviet. It is this hulking industrial piece of architecture and design, but it's really cool and unique.
Today it stands here rusted, paint chipping, a throwback to the height of the USSR and all of its power. It's no longer about propaganda. It's a relic of the Cold War past, looming over a city that outlived the system that built it. A funicular gets you to the base of the TV Tower and the top of Holy Mountain. And awaiting you at the top, this amusement park. Right next to that ominous Soviet tower is a cheerful place with carousels, roller coasters, and one of the best views in Georgia. The park dates back to the 1930s and expanded heavily in the Soviet era. It was designed as a people's park, leisure, joy, distraction, all under the watchful eye of the state. Today, the Ferris wheel spins with insane panoramic views, retro rides feel frozen in time, families and couples crowd the hillside to watch the unforgettable sunset over Tbilisi that absolutely delivers stunning views. Now to the secrets buried underground in the ancient capital of Mithaita, where stands this cathedral, the most sacred church in Georgia and one of the most spiritually charged places in Christianity. According to ancient tradition, this cathedral is built over the robe of Christ, the garment Jesus wore during the crucifixion. A Georgian Jew named Elias is said to have brought the robe back from Jerusalem in the 1st century. When it was touched, his sister was overcome and died clutching it to her chest. The robe could not be removed and was buried with her, right here. In addition to the robe of Christ beneath the ground, tradition holds this piece of wood right here is a fragment of the true cross, believed to be from the cross Jesus was crucified on, making this site sacred on a level almost unmatched anywhere outside the Holy Land. But this cathedral is not just a place of relics, it's also a royal mausoleum. Several of Georgia's most powerful kings are buried within these walls, including the king who founded Tbilisi, and also the 18th century monarch who defended Georgia against overwhelming Persian and Ottoman forces closing in from every side. For nearly 1,000 years, Georgian kings were crowned here, prayed here, and ultimately laid to rest here. This cathedral is not just sacred, it's where Georgia's faith, monarchy, and national survival all intersect. You don't just visit here, you stand on the spiritual fault line of Georgian history.
The church dates back to the 11th century, so it's very old. And there's some questionable architecture. They say that the way that it was built doesn't make that much sense, and that you wouldn't think that it would survive centuries and earthquakes and all of that, but through divine intervention it somehow has. I talked about how old the church is. There's some artifacts in here that actually predate the 11th century by several hundred years, so there's a lot of history inside this building.
In fact, in cathedrals and monasteries, town squares, and city streets all over this country, history and tradition abound. And we happen to witness some of those traditions firsthand.
We have stumbled into a very festive Christmas parade. Now, if you ask the State Department, they would tell you to avoid large gatherings like this in foreign countries, but this looked like fun, and so we're just gonna go with it and see what's happening.
We were there on Christmas Day, not December 25th, but the day they celebrate Christmas, January 7th. They follow the Georgian Orthodox calendar, which runs 13 days behind the calendar used in most of the rest of the world. And wouldn't you know it, we stumbled onto a very Georgian Christmas tradition. This procession is a deeply traditional Orthodox Christmas procession that's both religious and community-oriented. Rather than floats and bands, thousands of Georgians, children and adults alike, march together with Georgian flags, crosses, and robes, singing carols and chants as they go. Dignitaries are here too. In fact, we wondered why all these news cameras were here, and come to find out it's because the chairperson of the Georgian parliament was on hand, and we got to meet him.
Hey, sir, we're from America.
It's this guy. He's the third most important politician in the country behind the president and prime minister.
Hello. Good to meet you.
And he didn't seem too freaked out by me, so that's a win. Okay, so I think we have solved at least some of the secrets, mysteries, and things they don't tell you about visiting the Republic of Georgia. But one mystery remains. What is with all the stray dogs here? If you've spent any time in Georgia, you've noticed all the strays, but they're calm, tagged, and largely left alone. There are several reasons there are so many street dogs here. Historically, Georgia did not have widespread spay and neuter programs, and in economic hardship after the Soviet collapse, limited shelter capacity, and a cultural tolerance for free-roaming animals, the population grew fast. And that means the dogs are part of a managed system, not abandoned.
The thing about the dogs, they have this whole system in place. If you'll notice, they've got got tags on their ears that are color-coded.
Different colors can indicate their year of sterilization or which district handled the dog. Some tags also show the dog's registered in a city database. They're addressing the dog's situation humanely, one ear tag at a time. Okay, so there you have it. We've explored one of the most secretive, suspenseful, mysterious countries on the planet, and now you know a little bit more about this history-soaked spot on the map that you should definitely travel to soon. What are your thoughts? Have you been to Georgia? What did we miss? What should we check out next time we come here? Be sure to let us know in the comments below.
We'd also love it if you liked and shared the video so we can keep the conversation going as we travel to every country on the planet. And more than anything, hit subscribe if you don't mind so we can share the journey as we travel around the globe. I'm pushing 90 countries now with 100 or so still to go. We are back with a brand new episode of Window Seat next Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern. In the meantime, check out one of these other videos from Window Seat as we say goodbye from Tbilisi, Georgia. Bye-bye.